In this video, I'm going to talk about lists in GeoGebra. Now, lists in GeoGebra allow us to define collections of objects, which sometimes can be very helpful. And all elements in a list will be styled consistently. So let's check out an example. So I'm going to go to my input bar, I'm going to create a list, and I'm just going to name it L sub 1. And to start a list, we use curly braces. And if you type a curly brace, GeoGebra will probably autocomplete and add a closing one. So now within our curly braces, we can start defining a comma-separated list of objects. So for example, I'm going to create a list of points. So we've got 1, 1 as a point. We'll do 2, 2, 3, 1, and then maybe we'll just do 4, -1. So it looks like a list. So I'm going to hit enter. And when I do that, if I go show this list, now we've got these 4 points that were in our list showing in the graphics view. And if you hover over any one of these points, it's going to highlight all of them, and it tells us that we're looking at the list L sub 1. So if I click on this list and I go to my style bar, if I change the color, it's going to change the color of every single point in that list. If I make it thicker and open circles, again, it's going to change it for all of those. Now you'll also notice that if you click on this point, it actually lets us drag these points, but they stay in the same position relative to each other. So this is kind of interesting. They stay grouped together and they style consistently. Let's edit L1. So if I go to the algebra view and click on L1, I'm going to add another element by adding a comma, and then I'm just going to do something that looks weird at first. I'm going to type x squared and add a function expression to our list. So if I hit enter, now we've got a function graph as part of our list. Notice that the function graph highlights when we hover over any one of these things. It's blue because everything else is blue. And if we go to style this, now we've got a few extra options within our tab. Our style tab. For example, we can increase the size, like the line size, but that only applies to the function graph, and similarly with the dashed option. So now we've got more options for styling, but it only applies to objects in the list that can be styled in that way. Now also notice that we can no longer drag these points around. This is just how GeoGebra handles having an extra object type within that list. Okay, so I'm going to go in and clear out this x squared and just go back to using our list of 4 points. And one thing we might want to do is actually access an element in this list. So if we want to get this first point, I'm going to create an object called A. I'm going to say A is equal to, there's a function called element. If we look at our options, we see that list, comma, position of element is our first option here. So we'll do element of L1, and then we want the first element. Now we see that this is going to give us the first element from the list L1. If I hit enter, we see that this point A, so if I select A, that guy is the first point of our list. So maybe I'll just make A really large, just so that we can see it stand out a little bit. And now this point A is always going to be the first element of L1. If we change our list a little bit, like we made this 1, 2, A is still going to be the same thing as the first element of the list. Now, there's a whole bunch of list functions. So if I go to the little help option by the input bar, and I open the list tab, notice that there's just a lot of different list commands. And these are all super helpful. So like you can go in and see what each one of these do, or maybe Google what they do. But we have a lot of options like take the intersection of 2 lists, we can join lists together, we could remove an element. So there's a lot of different options for working with lists in GeoGebra. I've really only touched the surface of how you can leverage lists using GeoGebra.